Welcome to Behind the Curtain, Nashville's movers, shakers,
and tastemakers.
Brought to you by Chord Real Estate, your key to the heart of Nashville. I'm Steve Luther alongside my co-host Van Hoy.
Here we peel back the layers of Nashville's vibrant scene, sitting down with the innovators, creators, and leaders who shape our city. From music to business and everything in between, we dive into the journeys that have brought them to where they are today.
We're here to uncover the stories behind the success, the passion driving their pursuits, and why they've chosen Nashville as their stage. It's about the people who dream big, push boundaries, and make this city truly unique.
So join us as we explore the heart and soul of Nashville through the eyes of those who know it best.
Well, today we're excited to feature Chad Polk, the president and driving force behind CDP Architecture, or I guess Creative Design Professionals Architecture, a full-service architectural firm based here in Nashville. With over 2 decades of extensive experience in architecture, Chad specializes in delivering value-added design across religious, residential, commercial, and master planning projects. His firm is known for its creative approach and commitment to blending aesthetic vision with functional solutions. As a leader in the architectural community, Chad's work not only shapes physical spaces, but also enhances the environments where people live, work, and worship. Chad, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much.
Yeah. I like it.
I like that intro as well. Thanks so much for
It's impressive.
Well,
absolutely.
We'll talk about
it. Yeah.
So let's just kind of jump in. Let's just talk about your journey to establishing CDP. How'd you get started? What led you to CDP?
Yeah, so I went to school at the University of Kentucky. I went to architecture school there, from Kentucky originally. So just about an hour north of Nashville. This was kind of the big city that we would come to as a kid, to go shopping and go out.
Love it.
To eat and do fun things, go to the theater and stuff. And so when I graduated, I had an offer to stay in Lexington. I was working for a firm there. And I'm like, I think I'm ready to branch out. And most of my family was in the Western Kentucky area. So this was a lot closer, actually, than Lexington was to them. And so about 5 of us all got together that all graduated that year and moved to Nashville.
Cool.
And all in architecture.
What year was this?
This was 1994.
Oh,
so
yeah.
30 years ago.
Yeah. I was already here.
Which is crazy.
Can you believe that?
Nashville looked a little different.
It sure did.
A little bit.
That's right.
65 was a 4-lane highway.
Exactly. It was insane. So basically, we came down and interviewed for a bunch of firms over spring break. And then, I ended up getting a job. And we, packed it all up and moved down with had a roommate that was also a fellow classmate at UK. And so started out working for a great firm, worked for Gresham Smith and Partners, who I think everybody in town has worked for at least, one time. They call it you had to graduate from there to move on.
I love it.
And so I worked there for about 3.5 years, met my now wife there, which was great. So that served its purpose for sure.
That's right.
And had another opportunity that came up and worked for another firm that was basically right behind their building, across the back alley. So we got to meet in the back alley.
How
my
funny.
Wife, who was interning there at the time, I had moved on to another firm, Gobble Hayes Partners, and did a lot of civic design work. I designed the Madison Branch Library while I was there, worked on the airport, did several civic projects. And so I gained a lot of experience with that. Again, met my wife in the back alley, and we would go to the, out to eat at lunch. So
I don't know what that means.
Well,
I was going to leave that one alone.
Well, we'll just say it was a great, convenient location to be able to meet up and continue our relationship through having lunch together, going downtown, all that. Well, I had an opportunity after
I hope she watches this. So.
Yeah, exactly. She's like, "What are you talking about? Not a chance, buddy." And so at that time, I had gone to. I'm going to roundabout.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Hey, we're in Nashville. We like that.
That's right. Well, I had gone to a Predators game, and while I was there, one of my buddies got hit with a puck.
Oh, wow.
Oh my gosh. Well, this buddy and we had started on the same day at Gresham Smith, and then we left basically on the same week. We both left Gresham. Well, he went to another firm called Folks and Associates, and so he had been there for a while I was at Gobble Hayes. Well, he gets hit in the head with the puck, and I reached out and I'm like, dude, are you okay? I saw you got hit, and they had him on the big jumbo truck and everything. And he's like, oh, hey, good to talk to you. Hey, by the way, let's grab lunch sometime. We're looking to hire some new folks, and would love to talk to you about it. So anyway, long story short, ended up getting the job at that firm, Folks and Associates, and it was like 1.25 miles from my house. So I'm like, I don't have to go and deal with downtown traffic and all of that. And so I'm like, man, this will be great. So literally was just right down the road and worked for Folks and Associates for about right around 5 years as well. So this is what, 10, 13 years in now into being in Nashville. And I'm like, I've gained some great experience working for some really quality firms, doing some quality projects. And I think I'm about ready to pull the trigger. Well, about that time, I was getting opportunities to do a lot of little residential projects. And I brought them to the firm at Folks, and they were not interested in creating a residential studio. But I kept getting opportunities, and I'm like, I think I could earn my salary on my own. And that's kind of the initial thought that you just think, all I got to do is go earn money and start a business. That's not exactly how it all works. But it kind of panned out. I was doing, on the side, basically, they said, well, we're not going to do it, but as long as you do it on your own time, then that's fine. Cool. And so I was doing like 4 or 5 projects for people in my Sunday school class. We did our next door neighbor, and we did our own house at the same time, kind of renovated our house. And at the time, my wife was pregnant when we renovated our house. So by the time I had the gumption to pull the trigger, I had a 2-year-old.
Oh, wow.
And the impetus of really deciding to go out and branch out was really to control my schedule, to feel like I had a little more control and not feel the pressure of what the projects were or what, expectations were at that other firm of, frankly, my son was in daycare at Vanderbilt. My wife worked for Vanderbilt as an architect. My wife's an architect also.
Cool.
And so there were times where there's birthday parties at daycare, and I'm like, hey, I'm heading out today. Well, wait, we've got this meeting. I'm like, oh shit,
Right.
And growing up, it was very important to be involved in my kids' lives.
Sure.
And so this was our first, and I'm like, I'm not missing the birthday party at daycare.
Right.
I'm sorry. So it really kind of became a reason for me to control my own schedule and be able to. I never missed a birthday party. I never missed a soccer game. I never, those things were the most important thing to me. And so I decided to kind of go out on my own and figure it out.
I love it.
Now you guys do a broad range of stuff, religious and residential and commercial, master plan. I would imagine there's a lot to keep up with everything being so diverse. Like, what's your approach to working with all these different types of projects?
Well, that's a great question. We were just actually talking about this in the office this morning, that design it's really a process, regardless if it's residential or commercial. It's about understanding the client, what their needs are, really doing the research that it takes to understand what drives their industry or their needs or their specific wants and desires, understanding what their program is, again, kind of back to specific needs. Like on residential, I want 3 bedrooms, I want a bonus room, I want,
right.
XYZ. In commercial, it's a little different. How does your business operate? What are the needs of the business? Do you need a big showroom? Whatever it might be. So it's all about sort of understanding those needs and frankly, the pain points of what the client is going through currently that they're trying to solve. So at the end of the day, we're kind of problem solvers, but we're creative problem solvers. So we think about it in a little bit different way. We always want to interject some element of surprise, almost like giving them something that they didn't even know they could have. Like they've probably seen images of things and really didn't know what it might take to attain those certain aspects in physical form. But we're able to kind of think around the corner of ideas that they hadn't even thought about. And so again, thinking of it in who those different clients are is all relative to, again, a process of discovery who they are. Listening is like the biggest thing. If you can listen to, you can really dive in and see what's special and important to that specific client. And then, style is very subjective. And so that's sort of a thing that comes out of the process. So, we were talking about craftsman style. This home that you guys have converted, it was a home at one point that's been converted into, you said, a songwriting studio, and now your real estate office. And it's discovering sort of that, peeling it all back, figuring it out. So it's very subjective from whether you like that style or more contemporary. All that sort of just works itself out based on the client's desires. Because as I always say, it's like, look, I'm not the one that's going to live here or work here or play here. It's got to be your feel and your jam, if you will.
Do you deal with a lot of remodels? Like
we do a lot of
remodeling and that sort of thing?
In the past, we've done quite a bit of remodeling.
Because, Nashville, everybody's in the last 10 or 15 years, they wanted to I'm going to tear down this wall and want it to be open concept. Yes. Everything's open concept, right? And they rip out a wall, and who knows if they did it right.
That's exactly.
Flipped houses freak me out.
There's a lot that we've seen that's been done wrong.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I'll tell you that.
How often do people call an architect versus doing it just on their own?
Not enough. Let me just say.
It's ooh.
We've had to fix a lot of problems.
Yeah.
But we do remodel work as well. We did a lot more of that at the beginning because those were smaller projects that we could just sort of jump in and again, problem solve. And the thing is, for me, visually, I guess just through my training and in my upbringing, I've always thought spatially. Like I was always the one when my family moved, to rearrange like how we're, what room's going to be what, even furniture, et cetera, et cetera. So I've always thought in those kind of spatial ways. And so I can walk into a room or into a house and say, oh, well, we got to move this here. We got to move this here. And it's like, I just sort of see it immediately, And so then it's just getting it on paper, walking the client through it, and getting them an understanding. And sometimes you're like, oh my God, why didn't I think of that? It's so simple.
That's
we're
just
going
to move this about staging,
right? Yeah, it's like, man, but been doing this a minute.
So if I want to have like a refresh at the front of my house, right, and I'm like, I got a boring front of my house, I should have a portico or a big double front porch or something. You could design that.
Well, I'll tell you an example. So early on when I started my business, I met a lot of one-on-one with homeowners who wanted to do renovations, either exterior, curb appeal projects like you're talking about, or additions in their backyard or whatever it might be. And I would come over and start sketching. I'm like, oh, well, we could do this. Just take a quick sketch of their elevation and show them kind of an idea of, well, we could do this and that. And they're like, oh my gosh, you're the first. I've met with 5 architects. I'm like, first of all, 5 architects. Wow. What are we meeting with that man? And she's like, you're the first person that's actually gone out here and sketched something, drawn something. So she's like, you're hired. So I'm like, oh, okay, cool.
Love it.
So I think just being able to, share what's in my head, quickly on paper and letting the client see the vision has been really beneficial. But what we could do nowadays, it's so much, I wouldn't say easier, but you can really get a quick understanding of what those options can be, because you can do 3D scans and then do modifications and do it all in the computer and make it slick and pretty.
Which is amazing.
So you can run through multiple options. I wouldn't say it's quick and easy, but it's definitely something where you can see this versus this.
Right.
A lot more realistically, so the owner, the homeowner, the client, whoever it might be, can understand it more.
When does a typical homeowner call you? Like for not a typical homeowner, like when, like when should they call you? Like when they're dreaming, and then okay, I got to pay you X number of dollars to dream with me, and then I save up for whatever you tell me it's going to cost, or whatever? Or is it right before I'm ready to go and I've got my budget?
Let me tell you, a lot of say that a couple times real fast. Homeowners don't know where to start.
Right.
They haven't done this before, and even if they have, may have
deal with them every day. And I'm like, why did you do this?
That's right. Or they may have, like I was going to say, they may have done it wrong. the first time. And so what we do, and this came about, honestly, is about a year or two ago, because we would struggle with trying to define what the project budget was, because nobody wants to tell you at the beginning.
No.
And first of all, the way we do our fee, it's relative to kind of a budget, and we work all that out, through the proposal negotiation, et cetera. So they want that number to be low because it represents sort of a percentage of what our cost is going to be. I'm like, well, it doesn't really matter what you're going to end up with. You're going to end up paying that percentage anyway, or that amount relative to the project. So you might as well just share it now.
Sure.
But they never would, and so we would start designing, and they're like, oh, I got to have this. I got to have this.
Exactly.
And they tell us all these things. Got to have, must have.
Yeah.
And so we're designing. We create this amazing design. They're like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I want. All right, well, let's go send it out. And we would get through. We work in 3 phases: the schematic design phase. Well, 3 primary phases: schematic design phase, design development phase, and construction document phase.
Okay.
Those are the 3 main phases. So at the end of the first phase is the schematic design. You pretty much have the whole design.
Sure.
It's not all completely coordinated or integrated, but it's the most of the project is there. So we can take those documents and then take them to a contractor and get a budget. It's not a final bid because there's not enough information, but they can do a swag usually within 20% of what the cost is going to be for somebody that's an educated contractor. They'll be like, well, this is the square footage. We know this is this level of finish and detail, so I know it's going to be X amount per square foot.
Okay.
And that's a good general way to understand it. So we'd send it off after we've done the whole design.
Yeah.
To get a number. And then we get the number back and they're like, oh, well, this is twice what our budget is. Like, well, that would have been good to know before we got this far. Like, you never told us your budget, or you told us your budget, anyway, it would never end well.
Yes.
And now
then they've got to start cutting.
Right. We have to cut it. And then they want us to do it for free because we didn't meet their budget that we didn't know about.
Right.
It's like, all right, this isn't working. So a couple of years ago, we started to do this thing called a pre-design service package.
Ooh, tell me.
Okay. So pre-design service package is basically what it sounds like. It's a pre-design before we get into the design. It's where we come out and we study the actual site. We understand exactly what you can build. Sorry, I'm stepping away from the mic.
No, it's good. Good. We're into it.
All right. It's where we understand the site. The site is the first thing that has to be figured out.
It's important to know your site. Where your lines are.
Have to know exactly. Have to know your site, because honestly, we had other clients. I'm going to go off on an angle real quick.
Yeah, go.
Where we'd start designing like we were talking about, sort of ahead of getting all the information, and they're like, oh yeah, our backyard, it goes straight back this way. We've got all this room. We got, this is all perfect. And we designed this, maybe an addition off the back. And then finally get the survey after we've sort of laid everything out. They're like, the survey's on an angle. Their house is already over the setback.
Yeah.
And we're like, encroaching onto a floodway and all this stuff. Like, you didn't tell us any of this. Like, well, we thought it was just went straight back. So, now
sound familiar?
Has any of this sound familiar, guys?
Still too close to home, actually.
So
thankfully not our homes, but
very good, very good. Well, so we would recognize this. This came up, time and time again, unfortunately. So we're like, all right, we're going to understand the problem from the beginning, and by doing that, we have to get a survey. We have to get their zoning map. We have to understand what utilities are running, like all the things that could impact the design. And without that, it's really hard to even know where to begin. So that helps define what our buildable area is. And a lot of times these may be for, let's say, for new homes and additions. It all makes a difference. When you're renovating within the footprint, it's not as critical, but we still want to understand a lot of these features. But anytime there's a new footprint on the site, we have to have a certain amount of information. Along with that, let's say it's a new home, and we do a lot of ground up as well, all custom. The owners don't even know what they want or what they need or have to have, and so we help them understand. We have a series of questions we go through. we'll sit down in an interview kind of situation like, okay, well, what's important? Do you have a real strong connection with the outdoors?
Sure.
Are you going to have are you going to have a pool? Are we going to do a spa? Are we going to do, all these different features and elements, and rank them with importance, and then figure out what adjacencies have to be, next to each other. Like we want the master to have its own, private outdoor space, or we want this or that. And so we create a list.
That sounds nice.
Yeah. Exactly. So we create this spreadsheet basically of all the things that they say they want to have, which includes, sizes of closets, walk-in closets, et cetera, et cetera. And we put square footages to each of those items, and we'll kind of understand what those square footages are based off the answers to their questions. And we'll even talk to them about like, well, what was your last living room? What was the size of that room?
Right.
Was that big enough? Do you want it bigger?
Bigger.
Always bigger.
Always
bigger.
Yes,
Actually,
bigger.
We've had a couple where it's like, well, it was too big. We want to.
I don't want to know those people.
Right. Well, we like the people who want it.
Yes, bigger. We always want bigger. Come on.
That's right. So, we put this in a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And, there's a certain amount of factor that you want to give just for circulation, et cetera. So they're
party flow, baby. Party flow.
That's right. And so this ends up telling us what the size of what they've told us is important and what they say they have to have equals a certain amount of square footage. We take that square footage,
9,000 square feet minimum.
Sometimes it's more than that even, so I'll tell you what's really interesting through this process of going through this with multiple people. It's hard to get stuff under 5,000 square feet.
I agree
with everything people want. And so now we're trying to make that budget align with, their aspirations. So once we do that, we have the number, we give them kind of a good, better, best. Right. And the good is never just good. Good is going to be, we only do a certain quality of work. And so we're not going to do vinyl siding and vinyl windows and stuff.
Not that there's anything wrong with that for anybody out there. There's living in a vinyl home.
There's nothing wrong with that. But if you are doing that, you probably don't need an architect.
That's right. That's
and
right.
So we're looking for quality and custom and curated type of projects. So we'll start with a baseline of the cost per square foot. Then we'll give a better, based on this allows you to have X versus, over Y. And then a best could kind of be, you could spend, you could spend $1,000 plus a square foot, and that happens. But we try to stay in a moderate range and show them anything we're going to offer, they're going to be happy with. It's all about knowing the client and what their aspirations are. So once we have that, we say, okay, here's your budget based on what you told us is going to be in the program. And then they go, oh, crap, I didn't realize
that moment of reality.
I didn't realize that. And like, okay, well, we can either increase your budget if you want all these things, or we have to lose some of these things, or they have to get smaller.
Well, that's nice because you're just dealing with a features list. You're not dealing with a full design.
We haven't gone through this
my whole wing of my house.
Exactly. We haven't gone through that. And you could still have something amazing.
Right. They haven't fallen in love with a drawing yet.
That's right.
Which is huge.
And we could still, like I said, do something amazing in 2,000 square feet or
that's
500 square feet.
Right.
We can do amazing things with not really that much area, but of course, having more square foot, you get lots of different types of spaces that are more aspirational.
So for that service, is there a specific fee or is it?
Yeah, we usually do a fixed fee for that, and it depends on kind of the size and complexity of the project.
Is it affordable for the average person?
So I will say, typically on a small scale project, it'd be like $3,500, and then on a bigger, it could go between $5,000 and $8,000, depending on how big, and it kind of varies. But that's $5,000 is kind of an average.
Would you say if I spend $4,000 or $5,000 planning that I'm going to maybe save more than that with mistakes?
100%.
Okay.
And that's the whole thing. It's like you're going to have to go through this process one way or the other.
Exactly.
And it's good to know these things up front. It saves a lot of frustration down the road, from not only us for having to go through the design process, but for the people that are pricing it and repricing, and you're
It pays for itself.
And their disappointment in
That's
not
right.
getting what they thought they were going to have. I mean, there's so
Right.
many variables. And so from there, we really establish what the budget is, and we establish a fee, to move forward,
Cool.
based on an agreed upon number. So
I've been running my mouth.
You have, yeah.
You're mighty quiet over
I'll
there,
shut
Steve.
up a little bit.
Well, I've been running back too.
Well, you're supposed
You're-
to.
You're the design guy, so I knew
You know.
you would have a lot of stuff to say in
I know.
this.
I get excited.
How much of what you're doing does like sustainability and some of the new tech innovations, that kind of stuff? How much of that plays into what you're doing now? What kinds of things are coming down the pike now that are going to be kind of hot for everyone?
Yeah, there's so much. I just got
Tell
back.
us something fun.
Well, I just got back from DC. We had our AIA National Conference on Architecture, which was a couple weeks ago, and they have this big product showroom. I mean, it's like huge.
I bet it's so cool.
Huge rooms full of just everything and
Yeah.
innovations and software. And one thing we're looking at is how to integrate AI into our designs and into our services, and
Like a true smart house.
well, that plays in for sure. More on sort of the design side, how we keep from getting taken over by robots.
Oh.
But integrating some of the tools that AI offers, I mean, that's one aspect. But in terms of like technology, there's so much cool. The lighting options now for LED,
Yeah.
with, hidden cove lighting and just creating moods and automation, like just hit a button and it turns the room. You can set any mood in
Right.
a room. The lighting plays a lot.
Are they going to make fake lighting that feels warm and not fake warm? Because I hate the light bulbs of today.
I'm with you. You can dial them in pretty good.
That's what they say.
And it's pretty convincing.
Okay.
They even have those ones that flicker like a flame, but
Yeah,
they're not
yeah,
quite there yet.
yeah.
But I mean, the technology's
getting
insane
there.
right now.
Okay.
Yeah. So we try to integrate those, especially for they're not inexpensive.
Mhm.
It's for clients that want something sort of special. We've been doing a lot of golf simulators in houses.
Oh, cool.
And that kind of technology where people want to be able to have sort of rec area in
Right.
their home and spa areas as well, from cold plunges to saunas and everything in between. So I'd say that's a big part of it.
I don't really think green features really ever took off here in Nashville, like
No.
some of the coastal
Not in
areas. Why do you
Tennessee.
think that is? Is that something you think is going to change over the next 10, 20 years? Or
I think that's important to certain people.
Even here in Middle Tennessee.
Yeah, the issue I think for here is our energy costs are so low compared to other areas of the country. So it's not a pain point for a lot of folks. So in a lot of ways, it's we take it for granted.
We have good water here.
Yeah, good
electric.
water, good electricity, and
all that.
fairly low cost per kilowatt, if you will.
Right.
But there's some great technologies. One thing at the DC Expo that I was telling you guys about at the AA conference, they had the Tesla truck.
Oh yeah, the Cybertruck.
Yeah,
I've got a couple
Cybertruck.
neighbors with those.
Oh man, they're so cool.
It's so fun.
But they're so ugly too.
They are.
hitting.
They're so ugly. They're hot.
I kind of want one, but my wife's like, oh hell no.
It's like the Back to the Future car, but like up in the air.
Yeah, it's big. It's a lot
just
bigger
It's
than you
huge.
think it would be, right?
Yeah.
And so, of course, it's a big draw. They've got the lights on. It's got the cool, streamlined headlights,
Right.
tail lights, and all that stuff. And so I'm like, oh, I gotta go check that out and get a picture for my boys. I've got two boys. We have two boys, 19 and 15. So they're all into this kind of stuff. So anyway, go over there, and that's kind of the draw. Get you over there. But then what they're showing is Tesla has their own solar panel roof system. And so they've got, it looks like sort of a metal shingle type of roof. It's this large format, like 1x2 grid, but it looks like almost like slate tile.
Oh wow.
It's actually pretty slick. It's attractive, but it integrates in between actual metal panels and these glass panels. It's actually glass, and it's got a fritting on the back. It's all painted black, but it allows the sun to penetrate through that down to, the receivers, and then that, goes in and it charges up their Tesla battery, and then you can plug your car in, and it's like the whole package, right? Mm-hmm. And so, I think that's gonna hit, here and there.
So would that power a whole house?
I believe it can, under certain circumstances.
Wow.
Now, you have to have a pretty big roof, and it have to face south, and all the parameters of it. I don't know all the specifics on that system, but definitely offsetting some of your carbon footprint, I think, is what people are looking to do. Maybe not have total net zero. I think that would be awesome if we could all have net zero homes in this area, but it's just not real practical from a cost standpoint.
Sure.
But if a client wants that, that's certainly something we can do. Right. The technology is there to do it, but a lot of people just don't want to pay the premium, that's there right now to do it.
Yep.
Well, let me throw you a little bit of a curveball.
Oh, here it comes.
You brought up kids.
Here it comes.
My youngest is he's in high school. He's going to be a sophomore. He's quite the artist.
Yeah.
But he knows he wants to be a business person.
Okay.
So we've talked to him about architecture. Like, you should think about architecture.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Get a little bit of both worlds.
I've had a lot of friends, kids go into architecture recently.
What interested you in architecture? What got you into that?
Yeah.
Were you artistic as a kid? Were you, was it like more like construction kind of stuff? Like what was the driver for you?
Yeah, so that's a fun question. I will say my oldest son, who's 19, he's a freshman at Kentucky. He's going into business, and so he's been around the architecture with dad for a long time,
and mom, right?
And mom too. So now our younger one, he might end up going that route. He's super creative, but the older one, he was super creative too. As a young kid, I'm like, oh my gosh, some of the
that's cool
little structures that he was making and building just kind of blew me away. I'm like, oh my gosh, we got a little prodigy. And then it wasn't his interest. They're both big basketball players, and so sports kind of took him away from some of that. But I'd say one thing I would encourage at least is keep him in the arts. If you're interested in the architecture side, the business is something he can take business classes and learn about that outside of the creative element of architecture, if he's interested in architecture at all. But they don't teach you a lot of business classes in architecture, which is unfortunate, because now I'm out here trying to run a business.
Right.
I'm a member of a group called the Business of Architecture. They do a podcast too, and they've been great sort of mentoring me and sort of training a lot of the things that we miss in school. But your question was more, how did I start out and what my interests were? So as a young kid, I was always drawing or painting and doing things. Like my grandmother was an artist, and she did a lot of oil painting, and my mom sort of picked up on those traits as well. And so they're both very artistic. And so every time I go to my grandmother's house, she had this cool, it used to be a porch, but they converted it into a den, and that was kind of where we all sat and hung out. But it had a big flagstone floor,
cool.
And like large format flagstone floor, and I would just sit on this flagstone floor with watercolor paper, and the little strip watercolor paints,
right? Of course.
That used to get in the little packs, and like every time, just go over there, hey, me mama, I need the watercolors, and I just sit there and just be drawing something or painting something. And so I just wanted to be like her, I guess.
That's cool.
She did some cool stuff. So, I got pretty good at that, just being able to be, I guess, loose artistically with some of that with the watercolor, but then also being able to draw things that I could see. And so I had a lot of classmates that hated doing those drawing assignments. So I was just thinking about this the other day, that I remember one of my buddies, it was something on the Civil War, I think, and he had to draw this battlefield scene for this report. He's like, oh man, Chad, I know you can draw. You like to draw, right? And I'm like,
right.
Oh,
yeah.
And so he's like, can you draw this scene for me? I got to turn in with this report. And I'm like, okay, sure. Well, it was a pretty intricate, battle scene with all these people. And it took me, half a day or more to do this thing, but I still loved doing it. And I'm like, there's some people just don't have that gift and probably aren't able to.
I'd be drawing stick figures and wavy lines.
And so early on, I was able to kind of transfer, the hand and eye connection, I think, is the biggest piece there. Sort of connecting that direct connect from seeing something to being able to convert it through the hand and draw it was something I developed pretty early.
Cool.
And so through that, I kept with art programs through school, even through high school. But I never took a drafting class, though I always knew I wanted to be an architect. And for some reason, like I grew up in the 70s. So Mike Brady was, was the architect. Yes. He had a cool house.
That's right. He did.
I'm like, hey, the architect sounds good. And then I remember, I think it was in 8th grade, we had a career day, and as an architect came in, I'm like, oh, cool, I'm going to go check this out. He's like, yeah, so you go through, like 5 years of college, and then you need to go to grad school after that. And then it's like, that's another 2 years. And then it's like another 3 years that you have to work for another, for another architect before you get your license. So it's really like 10 years. I'm like, oh my God, I'm not doing that. That sounds like way more.
Be a doctor.
Yeah. I could be a doctor by that time. I'm like, that's way more work than I want to do. And, it just so happened, this was when I was down, we had moved to Georgia. My mom and dad divorced when I was 9. And so I lived with my mom and my twin sister and older brother. And
where in Georgia?
We moved down we grew up in Western Kentucky, and then mom got a job down in Georgia teaching school. She was ready to kind of get out of Western Kentucky and found a job opportunity in Macon, Georgia.
Oh yeah.
So down in Macon, Georgia.
That's right.
So we moved to Macon, and at the time Macon was a pretty happening little town.
Oh yeah.
There was a lot going on. And man, what a culture shock from Western Kentucky to down there. But it was amazing.
And I went from DC to Athens.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a
cool place
in the 70s.
So yeah. So, I lived down there 8th, 9th, and 10th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And then we moved back to Kentucky my junior year in high school, which is kind of a hard transition year,
sure.
The middle of your.
For real.
And so when I was down in Georgia, just the different culture that I brought from there back up to Kentucky was pretty interesting. I played drums in the band down there and played in the marching band. And the marching bands, you've seen the movie, oh my gosh, Drumline, right?
Right.
That was like our high school. I mean, that's how we were. So I was one of 2 white drummers in a 22-piece drum section. It was amazing. We're doing all the dancing and all the
flipping.
Unbelievable. So when I came up to my high school back in Kentucky, there was very more core, real serious, and I'm like, we gotta bring some fun up in here. So anyway, we kind of
Georgia's a good place to be from.
Yeah. So brought some fun and some
That's
fun.
Good.
But I guess all that to say is when I moved back to Kentucky, I kind of I had a history teacher that was at my high school, it's either junior or senior year, I can't remember, but she was a huge fan of architecture.
Cool.
And so she did a whole little course on Frank Lloyd Wright and all the American architects and everything. And so I really kind of rekindled my interest in the architecture at that time. And my senior year, spring break, I think it was, they had the admissions exam at the University of Kentucky. And so I went, and it was like a full day or 2-day like test, but it's all, you had to make all these different creative things. Like they give you a packet full of wax and string and like paper clips and bolts and all this stuff, and you had to create 3D models out of this stuff, and then you had to wrap the string around your hand and draw your hand, and then you had to draw your other hand with your left hand. Like I'm right-handed, so you had to draw with that hand. They're looking for creativity. You had to draw like a bicycle from memory, which I was a BMX guy growing up. I had a little mongoose that I would take off everywhere, and so I pretty much knew the bike pretty inside and out. And then you had to draw a detail component of that bike and all these different things. So I did pretty good on the test, and ended up getting admitted to Kentucky, and I got that letter, and I'm like, all right, this is it. And my percussion tryout at UK for the band was the same day as the architecture admissions exam. And the percussion professor is like, hey, I can reschedule. Don't worry about it. Well, once I got into architecture, I'm like, I don't know there's a career in being a professional drummer,
Right,
so
right.
I think maybe the architecture route. That's what my
Little
parents,
did you know you'd live in Nashville.
that's right. That's what my parents were telling me. I think you ought to go the architecture route. But funny thing is, I think I mentioned it before we started. When I first moved to town, I had a couple buddies that played in a band.
Right.
So I got to play drums and do architecture.
Love
Played
it.
in a band, and classic name. Our name was Thunder Skunk
Oh, wow.
because we're loud and we stink.
Oh,
So it was classic.
like
80s.
loaded diaper.
Yeah. But we played a lot of 80s cover college tunes. It was so fun. It was a great time, and we got to play out, downtown and do some fun stuff. So
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, going back to a more serious topic,
you would take us more serious.
Just kind of talking through the process, it seems like it's a very collaborative
yes
field. Of course, Nashville is very collaborative by nature. What are some of the things you do kind of internally to sort of keep that collaborative culture alive in your company?
Well, for one, it's a necessity. No project is done by one person. And even the contractor team is so important. A lot of times that doesn't get integrated until the end of the design. And then, we try to make that a seamless transition to the contractor and really help them out. We see the contractor as a very important team player.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of one of our mantras. There are some other architects that may not be as kind to the contractors in a way, but we really try to embrace that part of it. We've actually had the opportunity to design, I think, 3 different contractors on their offices because they liked working with us.
Cool.
And so that is kind of a feather in our cap with that. So collaboration is really key. We also, on all of our commercial projects, you had mentioned earlier, our main focus for the past several years has been more with hospitality type projects, bars, breweries, cocktail bars, and restaurants. And so we've done several restaurants here in town. And you talk about collaboration. A lot of collaboration goes into, pulling off a restaurant.
I bet.
So from kitchen vendors and equipment, design, layout, working with contractors too during that process. Our engineers, of course, to get the HVAC right, the the plumbing layouts. It's a team effort for sure. We also have interior designers on staff as well, and so there's that collaboration between interior design and the architecture, and those
That's
material
huge.
selections. So the other thing about our office, it's all one pretty much big open area. And so it's a very collaborative environment just out of the gate where, if somebody has a question about something, it's just really easy to go right to your peer and say, hey, I'm dealing with this. You want to look at this? And, so it makes it very collaborative.
Wonderful.
What's maybe the most fun project you've ever worked on? And then what's the one you're most proud of, and what speaks to you about it?
That's interesting. That's a good question.
That's really tough. I'll be honest. I don't want to, hurt anybody's feelings.
Well, no, we're asking most fun or, yeah.
Well,
he didn't say what's your worst project.
I know, right?
They're all wonderful.
They actually are all amazing. And we were talking earlier too that great clients make great projects, and we've been fortunate to have some really great clients. And a canned answer would be the next one.
Oh,
but I will say there's been some really, I guess, formative projects for me personally. I think the biggest one to start out was the Madison Branch Library project. That was when I was with Gobble Hayes, and that was the first project I got to go through the interview, which I can't believe Ron Gobble and Tim Lamb took me on the interview. I was an intern at the time. And during the interview, I'm like, oh, no, this is what we have to do. And I'm like sketching out, we got to take this, we got to keep the park. And I drew this diagram and layout. And like, oh my gosh, nobody's thought of it that way. And we ended up getting the job. And I thought Ron was going to kill me when we were leaving the interview. He was like, dude, what are you doing? Just sit back and shut up, but it was the right idea. And the way that project sort of molded me, and I took it from that interview all the way through the design, through a real strong relationship that I had with the branch manager, who, when I did the first presentation of the schematic design layout, I got to go up in front of the stakeholders, and she was, front and center, and got to present the design in front of, public, that was there, but it was a smaller group. And she started just bawling, just crying. I'm like, oh crap, I screwed up. What did I miss? And she's like, I can't believe this is going to be my library, and it solidified it for me, and I'm like, this is why we do what we do. And frankly, and that's one thing I want to touch on is, my purpose or my mantra around the office. And we've got a big neon light in the back of the office. It says designing joy. And so that is what I feel is my purpose, in life. It took a lot of searching to figure out, okay, why am I here? And this is a talent and a strength that I feel like I've been blessed with. And frankly, there's just not enough joy in the world. There's a lot of dark and not a lot of happiness in some ways. And so if I have a chance to spread more joy in the world, then that's what we want to do. So designing joy becomes our real focus for every project. I mean, it's like, okay, how can we make this just a little bit, even the process, more enjoyable? Because it's hard. I mean, all these projects, it takes a lot of effort on so many people's parts. It takes a lot of money. There's a lot of stress, whether that's residential or commercial, there's stakeholders. And so we try to make it fun. We have a group of just really likable people, and that all care about our clients and their end result. And that's our differentiator. It's our personal attention and real deep care for making sure that we're taking care of our clients and their needs at the end of the day. And then interjecting a little bit of fun and joy every chance we get.
It's so good.
Any big future goals? Where do you want to take the company?
Well, part of the joy for me is being at the beach. We're doing a couple beach houses down in 30A.
Cool.
We've completed one. We've got a couple that are some big projects that are in design right now. My goal is to have a branch office down there that I can hang out at after my boys are all out of school. At least the one that's still in high school. So he doesn't have to have their zip code.
That's right.
to go to school. Right. Then I want to spend a little more time down at the beach and do that. And then big picture plans. Clients are awesome. We mentioned having great clients make great projects.
Right.
It's also architects, we kind of know what we want to do, and sometimes if we could be our own clients, the opportunities that we could create in terms of more value for ourselves. So one goal I've got is to, potentially get into construction and development.
Cool.
Where we want to develop our own projects.
I know a realtor who would love to work with you on that.
Exactly. Well, what it takes is a lot of money, and architects, though sometimes, people think our fees are high, I'm hiring professionals, and professionals, need to should be making more money. And frankly, architects don't make enough money.
Gotcha.
And, when you look at our profession versus other professions that require a rigor and license and education, we're below the line in terms of what salaries need to be. And even still, it costs a lot of money to run a business where we're trying to pay professionals. So our fees are relative to that, but they're also relative to the value that we bring.
Right.
And so we're not the least expensive architects in town. I'd never want to be. I almost want to be the most expensive in town. Right, but I want to work with people that value what we bring to the table, and those are the clients that we really want to work for. And so I don't know if I answered.
That's good. I love it.
Well, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give for the next generation of architects just getting started out?
Wow, that's great. Learn AI. Learn how to use AI, because I don't think it's going away.
I don't think so either.
But the thing that scares me is people just being able to plug in just a written description of what they want and then getting an image back. that image is taken from other images that are out in the space, in the internet. It's not creating anything. It's all based off of past information.
Sure.
For instance, we're doing this really cool treehouse development for a client that's having all these Airbnbs. It's called the Tree Lofts of Tennessee. You guys need to check them out. You can go stay there. They're down Beersheba Springs. They're awesome. We're doing their phase 2, and I posted this image of one of the new designs in phase 2, and literally like a couple weeks later, I see something on Instagram that looks eerily similar to something that we've posted, and it's like I feel like somebody just went into AI and typed something up, and then it's going out and finding it because I hashtagged it, mountain cabin or modern cabin or whatever. Right. And it's maybe feeding from information that we're putting out there.
Right.
And so it's a little bit scary on how we copyright our ideas and our vision.
Sure.
And, maintaining control over that. Mm-hmm. And so that's a little bit, I don't want to say scary, but at the same time, something that we're going to have to understand and use to leverage it to our best use, I guess.
That's good.
Well, if someone wants to get a hold of you guys for your services, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so you can call me. You can call our main number, which is 615-349-9639, or go to our Instagram. It's at CDP Architecture. And, drop us a DM there. I pretty much check everything there. And give us a follow because, we could need some more followers. And honestly,
CDP Architecture.
That's right. And a lot of our more up-to-date project information is up there that we share. There's several things we're not able to share yet that are coming down the pipe. Cool. We got some NDAs on, but there's some really big, exciting projects. And then, we do a lot of adaptive reuse stuff. We're working with a prominent brewery here in town that we're doing a project out in East Tennessee for. And I can't wait to share that one. It's going to be a lot of fun. So lots of stuff on the horizon. But great. We're always, I will say one thing, we're always looking, the core team that I've got is amazing. Mm-hmm. We're looking to do bigger and better so we can have a bigger impact on Nashville and on the people that we, serve.
Right.
And the more people that are there, the more joy we can share.
That's right.
So
that's good.
Awesome. Well, Chad, it's been a pleasure having you today. And we look forward to seeing some of these new projects coming out that you're hinting at.
He's the epitome of what we talked about this podcast. He's a Nashville mover, shaker, and taste maker.
Well, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate the opportunity. It's been a lot of fun. I'm not sure we covered all your topics. We went on some tangents, but
I don't even read these things.
Right.
Got somebody.
But I had a lot of fun. I appreciate
this
you
has
having
been
me
awesome.
on. So
I got to save my shekels so I can have him come to my house.
That's right.
Well, with that, we will see you guys next time.
All right. Thanks.
Well, that's a wrap on today's episode of Behind the Curtain, Nashville's Movers, Shakers,
and Taste Makers.
We hope you've been inspired by the stories of passion, perseverance, and innovation right here in Nashville.
A big thank you to our guests for sharing their journeys and to you, our listeners, for joining us. And of course, our gratitude to Chord Real Estate for making this conversation possible.
Don't forget to follow or subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform.
Thank us.
Yes, you did.
Oh, I guess I did. Well, thank us. Okay.
Like I was saying.
Oh, yeah.
Don't forget to follow or subscribe on your favorite platform to catch every episode and hit that notification bell. We've got plenty more fascinating guests lined up, ready to share their insights and inspirations.
And we love hearing from you. So reach out to us with your thoughts, questions, or suggestions for who you'd like to hear from next.
Until next time, keep chasing your dreams and making your mark in Nashville.
Oh, my goodness.
Remember,
am I talking to Casey
it's
Kasem?
the people behind the scenes that make the city shine.
I love it. Take care. See you behind the curtain.